Eventually. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered if you can feel it all without failing? You're not too much, you're just on process. So hang tight. We're going to have a killer show for you as you wake up with the Giants. Good morning, Giants. Welcome back to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Nick Smith, here with my co-host, Andy Bangeter, who's also my beautiful girlfriend. And we are exploring relationships. A little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We are running the My 12 Journeys Sum Gigante program. I'll share that here in just a second. Let me just see if I can get it to even come up. But the Sum Gigante program launches on June 14th. So if you haven't looked into it, this is the journey of the Giants, and you can go to my12journeys.com and learn all about it. I just posted this new video in here that talks about the program and how it works and why it's backed in science and philosophy. The 12 Journeys is a powerful program based on the book, The Giants and the Smalls. And it's our way of helping you move from small to giant. So we hope you'll go take a part of that. If you haven't read the book, The Giants and the Smalls yet, go to Amazon, look up Giants and Smalls. You'll see it there. Make sure you get your copy. And similar to the Being movement, as you read it about your inner world, because it's going to change the way you do everything. And so I'm going to introduce our guest today. Andy, do you have anything you want to share before we jump in?
No housekeeping here.
No housekeeping? All right. So our guest today is Lindsay Gilman. She's a coach, grief tender, and the poetic voice behind Emotionally Expensive, a book and movement that's changing how women relate to their truth. Lindsay teaches women to unravel emotional chaos with deep compassion and zero bypass. Her work sits at the crossroads of emotional fluency, feminine expression, and collective grief, tending the invisible losses we carry, identity shifts, unmet needs, unlived truths. She helps women reclaim their voice, set embodied boundaries, and stop shrinking just to stay chosen. If you've ever felt too much or loved too loudly, this episode is your mirror. A powerful welcome to Lindsay Gilman. It's good to have you here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
You're welcome. We're going to dive into kind of your journey around relationships. We're going to get way off track here, which is okay. So don't worry too much about that. But we always start with the foundation of the non-conscious journey when we're looking at the 12 journeys, just because that is everything we think we are is tied up in the identity, the character, all the experiences we've had, previous relationships that we've had. They make us who we think we are.
Yeah.
Right. And then that operates our world, and we tend to reflect that in our outer world. Can you speak to the character? Let's start there, and how essential it is to recognize that that's there, and how we can dive into that and see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to speak to my specific journey?
That would be ideal.
Yeah. So my identity and my character is deeply rooted in the Savior for since as far back as I can remember, and that absolutely infiltrated and infused itself into every relationship, from my relationship as a daughter, a sister, a friend, and then eventually a partner, a wife. And it has been a decades-long journey of me unraveling that and discovering who I am underneath that decision that I made, that was actually my core identity.
Nice. And when you woke up to that, the navigating the awakening to that.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Do you have like a process that helps you to see that?
Yeah. For me, it's a process of looking at decisions. And I mentioned that just briefly when I was just speaking. And the work that I do specifically with clients, and what I did with myself and continue to work on myself with, is looking at distinct moments in my timeline, the timeline of my life, and looking at moments of loss, of grief, of trauma, and making sure that I'm really clear on what that actually is. A lot of people think that grief is like a massive loss, so a death, a divorce, losing a job, that kind of a thing. And grief is something that happens every single day. We experience grief on the daily. It's something that we experience with the passing of time. We experience it with the loss of an expectation. We experience it all the time. And when we experience grief, and if we're not anchored to the actual truth, with a capital T, we make decisions. And so I like to look at these down lines, these lines that we experience in our life of grief, and be able to go, okay, what was felt here? What was a decision that was possibly made here, and what's the decision impact? And when I'm able to look at those decisions, I'm able to really start to uncover this character
Okay.
that we've been underneath the surface. So
Yeah, let's play with emotions for a little bit because I think that gets in the way for a lot of people. I know for me in relationship, emotion plays a huge role because I might have a trigger, a thought, some experience, and then the emotions are going,
yeah.
right? And I was, as my previous relationship, there wasn't much room for emotion. And
Hmm.
with Andy, there's been room for emotion, but there are limits for her. When we talk
Yeah.
about boundaries, what I've learned is I don't get to tell her what she can or can't do around that. What I'm experiencing, I can feel those, but there's impact over there,
Yeah.
right? And so when you say grief, in our 12 journeys, when we use the term grief, we mean all of the heavy emotions because the word
Hmm.
grief comes from the Latin gravare, which is weightiness or the
Hmm.
heaviness.
Hmm.
And all of those emotions are really weighty:
Yeah.
anger,
Hmm.
sadness, depression, anxiety. Can
Hmm.
you speak to that? Have you seen that in your work? Like
Hmm.
the blend of emotions all tie into what you call grief?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a grief is deeply nuanced, and
Yeah.
it is I would say it's a blend of what we would consider conflicting feelings all living together at the same time. Right. And so
Yeah.
with grief, we can simultaneously be feeling anger while also feeling deep longing, while also feeling gratitude, while also feeling fear, while also feeling, all these different
Mm.
things at once. And so, for a society, and we're in a society that is not well versed in grief. It's not a welcomed um, experience that we have here. And so there's a lot of myths around it. And so when we're not clear on not only the truth of grief, but also the beauty, the importance, the value in it, we will start to vilify and make all of the emotions, the heaviness, the weightiness of those emotions that come along with grief, the enemy, and we'll shove it away and compartmentalize. And all along, we're still making decisions about ourself, life, and the world that aren't necessarily rooted in truth.
Yeah. So can our past relationships affect that?
Yeah.
Like, so do I
Yeah.
bring that forward into my new relationship? All the
Yeah.
things that I've experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And especially if we unconsciously are still identifying as them and tying ourselves to them. Absolutely, we do. And I believe that relationship in and of itself is the perfect place. It is the place to bring those things up to the surface, to be able to look at them with compassion and some neutrality, and be able to do the deep healing work with inside the container of a relationship. I think it's the place to do it.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
it takes a relationship where you can both hold that compassion,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Okay.
Yep,
So
exactly.
individually,
Mhm.
I think Andy, I'll turn it over to you in a minute here too. Is individually, I felt, great. I'm coming in, I'm like, yeah, I got this all figured out. I'm good. I've done my work. Then I come in a relationship and I'm like, oh, damn, I haven't done my work, right? Andy, do you have some thoughts around that?
Well, okay, so you're saying about the compartmentalizing it, and you have this grief from the past. I mean, it's like carrying that little gunny sack with you, and you go into the new relationship, and here's my gunny sack of emotions. And I mean, can you just throw that in the compartment itself and say, these kind of belong around this person, and I'm not going to dump it out on this person? Or, I mean, you do have to handle that. It's going to surface. It's right there, right beside you. So what's the best way in kind of keeping that separate from, because I remember when we started dating, Nick would say, "You're not my ex. This is a whole new thing. Everything's brand new. We're starting at ground zero. So you're not her. Those experiences aren't yours, but they tend to surface. And that little gunny sack comes and goes, I want out, And what's the best way to handle that when those past feelings, different person, start to surface and you're like, I'm going to dump this on you? What's the best way to handle that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, sorry, there's little bugs around here. I think that with past relationships, and the gunny sack that we're bringing along of the trauma and the grief that comes along with those, it's how we're identifying with what happened. So I believe that no matter what relationship you're in, it doesn't matter if it's with an ex or somebody that you're in right now, you're going to experience similar things, regardless of the person, because of the way that you are going to be responding naturally to grief and loss. And that's based off of decisions you made back when you were a kid. And so each relationship is going to bring up similar things over and over and over again. But let's say that there was something that was like unique and traumatic that happened in a past relationship, and you're carrying a fear, you're carrying insecurity or whatever that into this relationship. The most important thing is being able to have a narrative. And so speaking aloud what's actually coming up for you, with using I am statements. And so instead of being able to just like dump it on to Nick, for example, you'd want to be like, Nick, right now I'm experiencing a lot of like anxiety inside of my body, and I'm telling myself that you X, Y, and Z. Can you help me with that? Right? Where you're starting to give a narrative to the experience inside. And what that does is it can feel a little edgy, because it's like, what is that going to make him feel? Is he going to get defensive? Does that make me look like I'm not healed, or I'm not evolved, or whatever it is, if I start to vulnerably experience or narrate what's my experience is? But what it does is it actually gives it, it takes away the power from it completely. And both of you are able to meet in connection in that moment, instead of making him the enemy, and then therefore him making you the enemy for blaming him. Right. So I am statements and narration is very, very helpful. And always asking for permission first. Especially using feminine communication. You don't want to just dump that on him, but you could be like, hey, Nick, can I share something that's coming up inside of me right now that feels pretty intense? You'd be like, yeah, please share. The story I'm telling myself is this. I'm feeling this inside. I know that that's not who you are, but I'm still feeling it as if it's real. Can you help me with that right now? And then he can get curious with you, and you guys can have a beautiful conversation that brings connection.
That right there. Yeah. So the verses, just as an example here, oh, you're doing this and you're creating this and you're this type of person, and like, them, right?
Right.
Versus your own experience of, I'm experiencing this when you do that. And I just, if you're okay talking about it, this is what comes up in me.
Sure.
And then it becomes an exploration. And so how does somebody, like, if you've never been taught that, let's say that you've never experienced that, or you've never been taught how to do that kind of communication, how do people do that? Like you just shared, I'm experiencing this, but what about the other partner if they aren't used to that? Like they have shut down, or right? So how do you navigate that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of this are tools that I have learned through my own mentorships and coaching and reading, and having a deep desire to be able to take ownership for my part in relationships, because I got to a point where I'm going, okay, it can't just be them. Like, it's got to be me too. Like, I hit that point, right, where you're experiencing the kind of similar things over and over and over again, and you hit a breaking point. And so I think that that's an important place to get to, is getting to a point where you're now not wanting to look out here, but wanting to look in here.
Yeah.
And that's a weighty, grief-filled process in and of itself. And I highly recommend for anybody that's wanting to go and go on that journey and that self-discovery, that they have somebody who can walk with them through that process. And I did for myself, and I encourage that for other people. And so, for example, if one person is practicing this languaging and practicing emotional fluency and responsibility, the other person may not be there, right? And so, in that process of practicing that, you're also practicing not managing somebody else's emotion. And so, what comes up in the other person is theirs to navigate. Right. It's not for you to take over. So if Nick gets defensive from something that Andy is expressing to him, right, that's part of his journey. And she can see that with love and compassion and not take that on herself. Right. And encourage, like, you to explore it from a place of neutrality versus defense.
Probably take a time out and breathe first.
Absolutely. Nervous system regulation is huge in that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, so I did a video this week on boundaries, and a new discovery for me, because I had always learned that boundaries were what you allow other people to do, right?
Right.
Not at all. Because I was bleeding my quote unquote boundaries onto Andy and saying, I don't want you to do this because that affects me. No, that's putting the responsibility of my impact or my triggers on her. And there's no end to that. That's a black hole that can never be filled. So what I learned around it was that I get to recognize where my limits are, and limits a hard word, that's a hard stop, but that almost feels like a trauma response. It's more of where my edges are, where my tolerances are, where I can travel to, and I have a hard time going further. But the moment I step over and say, you need to do this in any form, right, then that's not a boundary, that's control.
I put up my walls.
Yeah. And wow, she's got some great walls, like the wall of China.
Yeah.
Like I'm never getting to the end of it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So with, with that inner work is really recognizing that person really has the right to do whatever they want, anything. And you get to decide within you what you'll allow yourself to handle within the context of that. So there may be a point where I would say, look, you can keep doing whatever. And it's not an ultimatum, but I can't keep going there with you. Right. Or
I'm not going to allow myself to participate. Yeah.
Can you speak a little more to that? Like the importance of recognizing that what's yours and what's not?
Absolutely. And this is something that I continue to explore within myself as well, because there is, I really try to find this beautiful space of interdependency within inside of relationship, where you're not hyper independent and you're not codependent, but you're in this beautiful interdependency where, no, you're not 100% responsible for the other person's feelings or their reactions or how they feel about things. And we still impact our partners. Right. And inadvertently and unconsciously, we impact our partners. And so I think it's important to have open communication and dialogue where you're able to talk about that impact without being demanding and entitled, right? Where it's, you're doing when you do this, I feel this is the impact, right? And you're having this beautiful conversation, and they have the opportunity to be able to think on that, shift that if they desire, if not. But if there's something that's a hard limit that you're talking about, it is so important to be well boundaried within yourself. It's not about the other person. It's about you. What are you going to allow yourself to participate in? For me, my boundaries, the being, like we talked about the being movement, I think on the last time that I was on here with you. But for me, anchoring to who it is that I declare to be is such a safety net for me when it comes to being well boundaried within myself. Because for me, if I declare myself to be peace, love, kindness, patience, those sorts of things, then nothing that's happening outside of me is going to pull me away from that center of being. And so if I'm up against something with Casey and there's something that's occurring where I'm feeling kind of pulled out of that center of being, for me, that's a boundary. And I need to go, okay, I need to remove myself from this conversation. I need to go for a walk. I need to, whatever that is, so that I'm able to get back to my center. And that allows just so much more loving toward me and toward him, where there's no resentment that's building up underneath the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bless you, Andy. I hope she's all right. She's coughing or sneezing there. So
No.
Sorry.
I love the idea of well boundaried. You know, when you're
Oh,
well boundaried,
yeah.
um, it's so interesting because the line. Okay, I want to play here for a minute because
Yeah.
you talk about feeling it all without losing yourself, right, or
Right.
losing your relationship.
Mhm.
But having the room for that, there, the boundaries or the edges, the blend between boundary and control
Mhm.
is so smooth, right? You
Mhm.
can move from boundary to control and feel like you're coming from principle and values and all this stuff. But if you go deeper in yourself, so I was talking to Andy about this last night, is that often people have issues with boundaries in the outer world because they have boundary issues in their inner world. Their inner child or their underdeveloped parts or their protectors or adapters come in, and those cross the boundary with their inner wiser self and take over. And so they can't control the boundaries inside themselves. So therefore they can't control
Mhm.
the boundaries outside of themselves. And so can you talk about that a little bit of the importance of really recognizing and talking to those parts? How do
Mhm.
you do that? How do you
Mhm.
narrate that
Mhm.
and rewrite
Mhm.
it? How do
Mhm.
you personally handle that?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I've had to do a lot of work on um teaching my inner child, my inner teen, all the different versions of me, that boundaries are not control, they're freedom.
Mm,
And for me, it's been a process of a lot of deep work journaling, visualization, and when I work on my nervous system. And so for me, nervous system work is noticing the physiological response that I'm having with an emotional or physical experience. And
mm,
so I notice temperature changing. I notice energy moving. I notice tension. I notice heart rate. I notice all of these different things. And as I'm noticing that, I'm also noticing what kind of a story is coming up for me. And I can usually tell which part of me is having that story because of the work that I've been doing for so long. And so understanding decisions that I made at certain ages. So that work that I've done on grief has
yeah.
really helped me know who's talking in that moment, who has the microphone, who's on center stage in that moment. And for me, it's then getting down to the truth with a capital T. So, for example, if my little 5-year-old is freaking out because she's so afraid that she's being abandoned because Casey needs to take a 5-minute pause on a conversation, right? And I'm starting to feel panicky. I'm starting to feel like my chest is getting hot. And the story I'm telling myself is he's not going to come back and talk to me about this. He's just going to let this hang. I'm alone in this.
Mm,
The work that I've done in my time from my timeline, I'm able to see that's 5-year-old afraid of being left alone and being abandoned. And so for me, the work is he always comes back. He loves
mm.
me. This isn't my childhood. I'm safe here in my body. Can I feel my feet on the ground? Practicing the foundational basic nervous system regulating techniques for me during those times is really important while talking to the one who has the microphone in that moment. And when I'm doing that, I'm speaking to that child as if, or that part of me, in reassurance and in truth, what's
And
actually happening right now.
you yell at that child? Do you say you're
No,
dumb? Do you say
no,
I
no,
hate you? Any of that? Why are you always
no,
here? No?
no. But I will say that there was a substantial period of time where I really, um, I did struggle with having compassion for certain parts of me.
Mm,
And I would, as I'm doing this work and I'm exploring and I'm realizing how much they have to say. And right, this is the judgment I'm having. Gosh, they have a lot to say. And God, they're really upset. And oh my gosh, they're so needy. And I start to have these judgments toward myself. And of course,
mm.
that's not helpful as I'm going through this process of integrating all of my parts and self love and all of that. But for sure, there was a period of time where, as I'm diving into this, I was noticing the judgments I have of myself and the different parts of me. And I wasn't always kind to all my parts.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
there's
am
a
now,
languaging.
but I wasn't for some time. Yeah.
You have a way of speaking about them, right?
Mm. Mhm.
Them, that part. There's
Mhm.
a separation from your identity of I am, no,
Yeah.
I am safe. This is who I am
Mhm.
now versus she still thinks, and
Mhm.
you speak to her. Do you name them? Do you give them
I
like
haven't I haven't named
no?
them. Some of my clients have,
Yeah.
and we have fun with that. I haven't named them. I it's she or they, and I have the age kind of in my mind, and the visualization and picture of what they look like, and
Yeah.
they all have a room. So I've created rooms for them
Okay.
that are
Okay.
safe
That's
for them to
cool.
go to, right? So it's like their own little room that they can go into, that they have decorated, and I've done visualizations around all of that. That kind of is like a safe little home for me to go talk to them in. Pull them off
Well,
the stage and go, let's go talk for a few minutes, right? What do you need to say? What's here? Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Andy, any thoughts or questions around that?
It's kind of fun because last night when we were talking, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna name this one, you know, uh
Mess.
Ness.
Yeah.
Ness, like darkness. So she's the
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
the other one was
Goddess.
Goddess.
Goddess. Mhm. Mhm. I
And
love it.
so she's my true self.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I want to start like doing the
Yeah.
visualizing and like give him characters, kind of like that movie
Yeah.
where the emotions have characters,
Mhm.
and work on speaking to them. And we did
Mhm.
talk about not
Mhm.
ostracizing them,
Right.
but recognizing and saying, no, you don't get to drive today. You
Mhm.
know?
Yep. You're not in charge today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy, you just talked about goddess. I have to share something briefly that made me just think of an exercise I love doing so much. So Martha Jeffers and I, we do retreats each year. We do one in October. There's one coming up this October. And one of the exercises that we do is we have all of our attendees close their eyes, and we kind of get them in, get them in their body, and they start to visualize their goddess and like the throne that she sits on. And so what's it made out of? What materials is she wearing? What is she holding? Asking questions like, what does she want to eat right now? What does she want to smell? What does she want to touch? And like really start to visualize this inner goddess and then the throne that she sits on. And so when we're playing with these other different parts, there's her that's always seated right at the center.
Mhm.
Um, and we can visualize her and seat
Mm.
her down in her throne to activate that, like, that's my highest self, that's my true powerful self. So when you're talking about your goddess, it made me think of that and how much fun we have doing that, and hearing all the different women, hearing how different their like inner goddess is, but how when they speak of it, we're like, oh, that checks out, I totally can see it, when they start
Yeah,
talking about it. It's
that's
pretty cool.
cool. That's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. The thought of externalizing that voice, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Knowing who has the mic. Yeah, I think this is the biggest challenge, is knowing who has the mic, because when you're coming from those insecurities, and anytime you're coming from the past, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, or from your point of view, if you're coming from the past and wounds, it's going to come across as an insecurity, or it's going to come from an insecurity, um, because you're referencing a pain that you've experienced in the past, and you don't want to experience that again. So even though it might feel like you're elevated, you can kind of tell based on who has the mic, the emotional microphone of, no, you're feeling fear.
Yeah.
So you're in your insecurity. Because what I've experienced is that when you're feeling compassion and love and understanding, then you're more in your wiser self, and you're more present. But anytime you're coming from the past, you think you're acting as your wise self, like they've put
Mhm.
on the mask of wise self,
Right.
but it is a full-on mask,
Hmm.
right? How do
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
teach people to recognize who's at the microphone?
Yeah, it's with the narration, and so we have
Okay.
there's a story that comes from the narrative of fear, which
Okay.
is the wounded story, right? And then there's the narrative that comes from love,
Mm,
which is the healing story. And so we're able to identify who has the microphone based off of what narration they're telling. If there's fear, if there's insecurity, if there's self-doubt, if there's low self-worth, if there's self-abandonment, it's fine, I'll just handle it, no big deal, right? And there's that
mm,
kind of story going on too. It might not be loud, um it may be kind of a martyrdom, that's a quiet martyrdom that's there. And or there's the narration of love, and through the healing story, which is powerful connecting I am statements. So like, I am safe, here with you, or being able to declare what it is that you need without fear or self-abandonment and those sorts of things as well. So it's identifying the story, what is it that you're telling yourself, basically? And then we're able to know, is this coming from past wounding, or is it coming from healing? Who has the mic? Mm-hmm.
Karaoke Andy. Yeah. Okay.
The loud voices there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's her jam. The self-abandonment versus self-leadership. When somebody learns to self-lead, then they can lead others. But until you can self-lead, you can't lead others. And all we do in leading others is show them our way, and if they want to follow that, great. But the self-abandonment is, I often hear people talk about their parts and they shame them and they hate them, and I should know better by now, and all this stuff, that they were conditioned to tell those parts. Or if we were to speak like a parent, you'd be saying, that's naughty, you're not okay, we don't do that, that kind of speaking. Well, there's a level of that in reparenting these parts, that if you abandon your parts, abandon yourself, then they go into exile. They go into hiding, and they'll mess with your life behind the scenes, and you won't be able to do anything about it, because they're not going to show their face, because every time they do, you yell at them.
You shame them.
Right? Is that accurate, or do you have an experience?
That's so accurate. Yeah, so accurate. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think self-abandonment is something that is so sneaky, at least for me. I still notice where there are sneaky ways where that comes in. Actually, I have a recent story. Do you mind if I share it?
No, not at all.
So just last week, so I was telling you guys before we got on here that Casey's been looking for work for several months now, right?
Yeah.
And so it was earlier this last week, and Bo, our youngest, had some swimming lessons in the morning at like 9 o'clock in the morning, Monday and Tuesday. And so I've had full work days with clients, and I asked him if he could take Bo to swimming lessons on Monday morning, because I hadn't gotten myself to yoga in like 2 weeks, and it needed to happen. And so I asked for that and said, hey, can you take her to swimming lessons? And I will make sure that I take her Tuesday, so that he had a bunch of stuff he wanted to get done with, like applying for jobs and resumes and that kind of thing. And he was feeling stressed. And so I said, I'll take her. And then knowing full well I had a full work schedule, right? And so Monday comes along and passes, and her swimming lessons were that morning. And then that evening he was like, yeah, so tomorrow when you take Bo to swimming lessons, I'm actually going to go meet one of my friends at the skate park, and like, I don't know, something with videography or something they were going to do. And in that moment, I felt a whole bunch of things. So a whole bunch of things flooded my system. One of them was, what the hell is he doing? He said he was going to take this time to like get some work stuff done, and now he's going to go skate, and I'm taking Bo, and I have work, and all this stuff was coming up, and I was trying to be nice and take him or take her, and blah, 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 blah. And so I'm noticing, and I'm trying to do the work, right? So I'm in here noticing all the stuff that's happening, but I'm not narrating it. I'm just noticing it. And so I'm quiet.
Okay.
And so then I go sit on the couch, and I'm kind of eating some lunch, and he sits down, and he can tell, he can notice that there's a lot happening inside of me, and he's wonderful. And he was like, hey babe, I'm just going to cancel that. I'm going to stay home and get the work done. Like we had agreed to. And he's like, I don't want you to worry about this. I got it. No big deal. Right. Easy peasy. And he was like totally cool with it. Loving. He noticed I was having a hard time, all the things. And right in that moment, talk about self-abandonment. What came up inside of me was, I need to take it back. Like, I feel so bad. No, he should go do that. He should go. Yeah. I was like, and so inside I was like, oh my gosh, I just inconvenienced somebody. I need to take it back. He's going to be mad at me. I'm burdening him, like all this stuff, but I didn't do it. Then I started to narrate. So I said, babe, thank you. You're so loving, and you will not believe what's coming up inside of me right now. And I start talking through it. But that's how quick it can happen. That's how, like, little small moments like that, where I would have just been, no, never mind. It's fine. And what would have happened? I would have ended up being resentful. That is a little seed of poison in the well of our relationship, right? That just like permeates out, right? You think it's benign. You think it's small. It's not, right? Those little moments where I just, never mind. It's fine. No, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Right. And that's like, put that on my headstone, Lindsay Gilman. It's fine. That's like
Her last words.
That's my favorite. No, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Her other favorite F word.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's amazing, right? And I'm talking to him about what's going on, and he's like, wow. He's like, thank you for sharing. Like, it's all good over here, but it's just amazing how in little tiny moments like that self-abandonment can kick right back in. Because I did not, inside of me, it's like life or death. What if I lose his love? Like, that's what comes up, and it's wild. Right.
Yeah.
But that's how programmed this can be inside of us. And so I got to work with the parts inside of me that were coming up and feeling afraid, feeling like they were the problem, feeling like they weren't being easy, right? The good girl, the easy one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it still happens. It still comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. That word resentment, right?
Yeah.
It means to re-feel.
Yeah.
Sentir, to re-feel it. And you resent by going back and feeling the same feelings that you had when it originally happened. And you don't resolve them. You just sit in the emotion. Right. And it's so interesting to see that, we think we're being logical. We're thinking through this, and it's a full body experience, and our parts have taken over. And we're sitting there witnessing it, like you say, just witnessing it, going, please stop. Like, what the hell are you doing? And then they like destroy everything. And then you're sitting there going like, what the hell did you do? You just like, and then it says, I'm sorry. And then you can't help but feel bad for it. And then you feel the guilt. And I picture right here, like my 2-year-old son just destroys everything. And I'm like, it's fine. It's okay. I'll clean it up. Right. But then there's the teaching, and it's us parenting, reparenting ourselves in the way that maybe we never learned. Maybe our parents were never equipped in it. Maybe our culture was never equipped in it. And so it's up to us now to self-lead and reparent those parts of us that were wounded, that show up in situations like that do make up all the stories. And man, and I'm sure a lot of people experience this, it is a full body hijacking of your systems. Yeah. And it's like all those boundaries that you said, oh yeah, I'm this, I'm a queen. I'm, whatever. Not me. I'm a king. But
let it out with
And Andy, you've experienced that with me. And on the other side of that, you've experienced that side where my emotions have hijacked. And somehow, like, I don't know how she's still here. She's amazing that way, but she allows it to be there, but she also knows where her limits are. I don't know, Andy, can you speak to that a little bit?
I think where I struggle, it's like I know where my limits are, but my struggle is I tend to shut down.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can feel that. I don't want to talk about it right now. And it could be, there's triggering things like we had a conversation last week and emotions were coming up for him. I knew where I was, and I knew I wasn't in the wrong, but he was still having emotions. And then it felt like he said something and it was hurtful to me. And right then, shut down. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to talk about this right now. And I was done. I hung up. I didn't feel like I hung up on him because I let him know I was going to hang up. But to him on his end, he's like, oh my gosh, she hung up on me. And he's more, when he has things present, he really wants to talk about it a lot. And I'll talk about it, but I also like get to a point where it's like, I'm exhausted. I'm feeling flooded. I just need to have a break right now and just break. But so not saying my way of doing it is great. It probably isn't. But how do I keep from that shutdown?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's the early noticing inside of your own body. So when I work with couples, there's a somatic exercise I have them do where they're able to identify when they're feeling open, right? And when they're feeling like they're starting to shut down. And when you're starting to notice that, that's when we want to speak up and go, I'm noticing, right? I'm noticing that Pause. I'm noticing that I'm starting to feel like constricted. I'm starting to want to shut down right now. Can we take a 10-minute pause? Can we revisit this tomorrow at noon? Can we, right? But you always want to have a follow-up time, especially for those that are more anxiously attached. They need to have like what's a time that we're going to meet again? So it's not just left hanging, because that will trigger the abandonment wounds, right? It's like, let's reconvene at this time, at this place, kind of a thing.
I'm hearing myself in this a lot. Like, yeah.
But being able to have that is really, really helpful. And for those that are more avoidant and shut down, during that time of break or pause, you want to make sure that you're not uh, activating more of a shutdown. So you don't want to go and then just start scrolling or numb out in front of the TV or whatever that is. For those that are more avoidant and they need the time out, then you need to do some light activation. Go for a walk. Tap your legs a little bit, shake your body out a little bit. But for the avoidance and the shutdown, you've got to bring in some activation to bring you back online so that you're not going into full shutdown mode and using and going into that trauma response. You want to stay present and in the window of tolerance. Yeah.
No lopping off my head.
Off with his head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, when we're talking about like a heterosexual relationship, monogamous relationship here too, there is some things that are happening energetically as well, where it can be more challenging for a woman to listen to a lot of emotional processing from the masculine counterpart. And we can hear some of it, and then we hit a limit and a point where there's a primal thing that happens inside of us where we go, if he doesn't have this figured out, the king has fallen and we're all going to die. Like that's kind of what comes up. And so it's like and so for those that some can get anxious about that and some can get avoidant about that, depending on your attachment style. Right. When that comes up. And so there could be something happening on like a polarized energetic kind of level that is creating some of that friction between you two as well, when it comes to the emotional processing.
I think the cool part is we are human as human get. Right. We have emotions just like anybody. We are in a relationship where we're navigating, how to be together in relationship. And, I've had to develop tools to help me. I use AI to do that, to help me see the reflection accurately, because it gets clouded by these parts. And so I'll speak into the AI and just be like, okay, here's what's going on. And I think it's her, and she did this and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, actually that's you. And this is why.
Tell me I'm wrong.
Yeah. And it's like, it calls me out.
Yeah.
But then it helps me to rewrite it, because it's not enough to just be aware of it, because you can be aware of it and lose your freaking mind over having awareness and still doing the same patterns.
Yeah.
And so you have to rewrite the story. And what I've been learning is, especially with narrative mapping, is that I have to externalize it. I have to take that story from an I to an it, from an I to a they, or, and pull it out of me so that I can talk to it. And then I'll talk to it and I'll characterize it, and I'll identify all the things that it is and that it learned and the impact of that. And then I will say to it, look, I love you. I appreciate you. That worked at some point for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Right.
But we're going to go ahead and rewrite it. Yeah. And then to work to rewrite it, I speak in the I am, right? That no, this is who I am now. That's who you are. That's who you were, but this is who I am. So you can come along while we practice this. For me, it's the analogy of the giant on the shoulder. Or the small on the shoulders, we put that small on our shoulder and we stand up and we show it a better way, rather than saying, you're wrong, you're bad, you can't be here.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that if we look at everything you're describing here, is emotions are okay. There's nothing wrong with it. Your body's doing what it's designed to do. The thoughts are even okay. But they're just not working in the relationship. They're causing a rift in the relationship. And so, like, when I experience Andy shutting down, then I'm more the anxious, and I'm imagining all the things she's doing to lead me, right?
Yep.
And she's over there like, good God, he's like too much right now. I need some space. So there is that dance, right? That
Like,
anxious
hello, there's
avoidant
something
dance.
going on.
She's out dancing or whatever, right? And I'm like, what the hell? How are you doing that? And so then the story spiral. But you know what I appreciate about her is that she is willing to slow down and look at her part, because
Yeah.
I don't need her to stop being her, but I do want to share, look, this is the impact it has when you are being you over here. But then I have to be careful not to turn that into control and
Right.
manipulation,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's on me. That has to come
Mm-hmm.
back here to me going, okay, what do I need to do in here?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important to see the innocence in that as well, right? Like, for those that are more anxious,
Yeah.
I believe, and I'm one of them. Um, we tend to have pretty covert and unconscious ways that we manipulate in order to get the safety and the security that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And so it's so important, like you're talking about, to be able to have this this process of identifying who's talking, who has a microphone, being able to love it, and be able to give it a new narrative and to rewrite. Using the truth with a capital T of what's happening in the reality of the situation. But in all of it, for me, seeing the innocence is such a huge part, to be able to kind of naturally have compassion. It's like all of this is innocent right now. Everything that's happening between both, let's in your situation between Andy and Nick, is that both of you want to feel connected and loved. Like at the core of it, that's what you both are wanting. And all of these pieces and parts will either run away and hide from it, or get anxious and push and pull and coerce for it, right? Try to corral
Yeah.
for it. But at the core of it, the innocence is that we're desperate and desiring to feel loved and safe and wanted and connected. And I think
Beautiful.
that's
Yeah.
such a beautiful human thing. And when we can see that in everybody, it's like, gosh, everyone is just hungry for love, and they're going about it in an ill-informed way, right? We can layer in a lot more compassion in the world and in our relationships.
Yeah. And it starts individually with self-leadership,
Yeah.
right? That when you can lead those parts of yourself, then you can do that in relationship. But if you can't do that in yourself, then it becomes challenging in relationship, because now you put the responsibility on your partner. It's not theirs. I don't want to marry my mom.
Right.
She doesn't want to marry her dad
Right.
or be in relationship with her dad.
Mm-hmm.
So now we've talked about the individual and how important it is to manage and lead your inner world. So how do you collectively, as a couple now, because now you have collective boundaries that you're going to
Yeah.
create together. You have collective dreams and visions and goals. How do you navigate that now? Right? How's that conversation go?
Yeah. Yeah. Thankfully, in my relationship, and also with the couples that I work with, one of the first things that we do, and we talked about this just a little bit ago, is who are you each individually declaring yourself to be? And that's a huge thing. So identifying who it is that you are, who you're claiming yourself to be, is huge, because with that, you're able to see and share that with one another. Like Casey knows who I declare myself to be. Those sorts of things. The same with the couples that I work with. We're able to see how similar we actually are. And our ways of being and our values are very, very similar. And so that gives us a beautiful framework, and a safety net for ourselves individually. And then as we're navigating more challenging conversations, because even though we might have similar ways that we want to be, desires, other things are all going to be different, right? Impact, triggers, all of that stuff is different. And so then in that, it's about having loving conversations and narrating what's happening for each of us individually, from our declared states of being. If you're not moved from that, you're able to navigate beautiful conversations together in safety, in connection. And I think a big part is also remembering that it's about connection over perfection in relationship. And so if your goal is about connecting, then we're listening to understand. We're expressing from I am statements, not you are statements. And it's about connection over perfection. And you cannot go wrong with that when you have that as your relationship mantra. You're able to talk about anything.
Yeah.
Anything.
I like that. I like the word perfection. Truly, like the original Latin word was perfecere, which is to perform and to complete. And we made it into this flawlessness, and there's a principle called satisficing by Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon, which is good enough. And connection is good enough, and perfection truly is good enough because you're doing what it takes to finish, and staying with it long enough to finish. And when you reflect back using that definition of perfection through history, you talked about Christ-centeredness. You think about that perfection; it was performed and completed versus flawlessness. And we've twisted the meaning in there that perfection means flawlessness. And I look at relationship as it is not flawless. It has been the messiest, and stuff has come up that I'm like, oh, I'm totally healed. And then I get in relationship and it's like, dude, you are not healed. And then, there's these bids and coercions to try and get her to do things so that I can feel safe. And it's like, no, that's not okay too. So I start to see these patterns in myself of this is what I do when, and it's grasping for, like you say, peace and love and safety. And that's something that all of us want at our core, is that safety and love and peace. And man, I've landed with just a really patient woman here, that gives me room to have those things, but she also says, look, that's not mine when it's necessary. Right.
I think
So
that's so beautiful.
what comes up as you hear that for you?
Oh, I just think that's so beautiful. I think that that relationship is what I tell my clients, that it's like the ultimate, it's like ayahuasca journey on steroids, like a relationship. It's like it is the I think it is quite a spiritual experience. And you will encounter tons of deaths, tons of rebirths. You will um it is wildly challenging and wildly fulfilling. And um as I'm listening to you talking about her patience, I think that that's such a beautiful way of being. And I think, I'm sure you both are extremely patient with one another. It's not just Andy, but patience is so important, because so many people want instant gratification in our world nowadays. And are, if the relationship just in that moment isn't fitting, or it's not aligned, or it's like, it just isn't speaking my truth, or whatever people say, they'll
Yeah.
bounce out.
Or
And
that spray painted grass over there looks way
yeah,
nicer, right?
exactly. And
Way easier.
I will tell you that it is, to stay patient and to lean in and to allow space for your partner to explore if they're willing, right? Because this is a big
Yeah.
thing too.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to make sure that your partner was somebody who is open and willing to participate in the highs of the relationship and the lows and the mud and all of it, and willing to walk with you from a place of conviction and loyalty and commitment. But patience, I think, is such an important aspect to bring in. And if you stick with it and witness in awe your partner navigating what it is that they're navigating, it can be something that is wildly fulfilling. Even if, like, let's say Casey and I are at different places at different times, right? And so if I'm in a place where I'm feeling like I'm kind of coasting and I'm in a good spot with myself, and I'm watching him just navigating some hard stuff, it is so profoundly inspiring for me. It's not something that I'm like, oh, he's not where I am, I want to bounce. I learn so much by watching him. And then likewise, as he's watching me navigate at different times, we're able to learn from one another.
I like that.
And as long as we're comfortable with all of our individual parts, we're going to be okay with our partner's individual parts as well. That can come out and take the microphone and run the show when maybe we don't want them to. So
Yeah. Andy, what thoughts do you have around this, or what questions have come up as you've listened?
Well, there's so many golden nuggets here. I'm gonna go back and then listen to this and just take some notes. But I absolutely love this chat with you, Lindsay. And gosh, there's a lot of good stuff. But I think keeping in mind, in relationship, what is the end goal? And despite this going on, that connection, working on just keeping that connection and creating that, or not creating, but expressing it in a narrative fashion
Mhm.
to get through it, and being willing to listen but not let certain parts drive.
Mhm.
There's a lot here.
Yeah, and the key too, we discussed this briefly last night, is to not lose yourself. And when when you know who you are and you know your parts and you know your boundaries, your limitations and your edges, then it's hard to lose yourself because you'll recognize what's yours and what's the other person's.
Mhm.
Because what we tend to do is adjust ourselves to what we think they need. So we throw on the mask, and then we lose ourselves trying to fit into the demands that they have. And it's like those demands, once you open that door, they become like Pandora's box, right?
Yeah.
You open that door to the next and the next and the next, and
Mhm.
you call it goalpost moving, or
Mhm.
you're walking on eggshells. It's like, no, that's not healthy, because you're allowing your self-identity to bleed into theirs and their needs. And when you know who you are, you won't do that. You won't tolerate that. And then the other person, it's up to them to recognize that they're doing that. So it does take two people that are aware enough. Not, it doesn't have to be this idea of perfection that we hold. It's
Mhm.
aware enough to recognize that, no, this is who I am. I'm going to do these things. I'm not going to do it intentionally to hurt you. That's not necessarily why I do it, but I'm going to do these things. So if you can't handle that, this is who I'm going to be here. And it's
Mhm.
not this unapologetic thing, I don't think. It's not like F you, I don't care what it,
Mhm.
it's more of, look, I have understanding, but you're asking me to fundamentally change, and that's not okay.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
So I think that's where Andy and I have learned. I'm learning Andy. And it's funny because in the beginning I was so good with everything. And then I got invested and I'm like, oh, I'm not so good with everything. And now I'm learning
Chat
to,
on Saturday Night Live, like,
yeah.
that's cool. Like, whatever. Doesn't
If you guys
matter.
get a chance, watch that Chad on Saturday Night Live. I was like that in the beginning. And then as we got invested, I'm like, ooh, I like her.
Like,
And
ooh,
then,
I'm gonna just hold her and keep her in a little box.
and then I got like Tommy Boy with the roll. I'm like,
Right.
and so now I'm learning to dance with her. So I
Right.
go from Chad to Tommy Boy,
Yeah.
if you can picture. And now it's been like, and I'm grateful for the grace she gives, because now it's of, really learning to dance with her,
Mhm.
and allowing her to be fully her,
Mhm.
allowing that room for her to be fully her, not like I just gave her permission. Oh, you have the grace to do what you want, right?
Right.
But then also not losing myself in her,
Right.
and not having her lose herself in me. That's where the dance really happens.
Mhm. Mhm. That's so beautiful. I love the analogy of the dance, because it is. It is. Mhm.
Yeah. Any final thoughts as we come to the end of this? Like, anything you feel nudged to share?
Mm.
I killed myself.
I like Hughes here, dancing with her, not dancing for her. I think
Yeah,
that's so
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
I
Performance.
don't
That
want him to be my dancing monkey.
Yeah, yeah. I think, and on that note too, just kind of ending with it, is that um relationships, I believe, are meant to be used. And I don't mean that in I'm like taking advantage and I'm using
Mm,
somebody, but they're meant to be used and for us, not for
utilized,
the other
right?
person.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like what is in this for me, for my own development, so that what is it that I am not seeing in myself that I can only see when I'm with this person? What is it that where can I widen my capacity to love? Where can I widen my capacity to forgive? Where can I, and
I like that.
there's these beautiful opportunities that only come up within relationship, that is for you in honing your person, in developing yourself. And so I believe that with conscious relating, the world in and of itself, if people can learn how to consciously relate and be able to communicate in ways that are healthy and connecting and honest and true, I can't imagine the healing that would take place across the collective, across the world,
Oh,
if we're utilizing our relationships and using them for um, just to hone ourselves, just to continue
I
to
like that.
Yeah, like weed out what was never ours to begin with and get to the clarity of who we really are.
Yeah, I like that. Andy, final thoughts from you?
Mm. I for some reason I thought there's people that avoid that. They avoid the
Oh yeah.
relationship, just because of past history or whatever, what they hear and the growth that they're missing out on,
Yeah.
in that avoidance. And, there's only so much growth that you could do outside, but the real growth is when you have that counterpart there,
That's right.
and it's
It's hard though. I'll say it's challenging. It's not for the faint of heart.
Oh, come on. It's easy. This is easy. It's not for the faint of
to
heart.
us.
They lie.
Damn Disney.
This is funny because the other day, Andy's been big in the singles community here in Utah, and there's all these guys that are just like, oh, I just need to find my one, and girls too. And it's like, if you had any idea the work you're going to be doing, you would slow your roll.
Be
right
careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because
I just can't wait to have that relationship. Are you sure about that?
You sure?
Yeah.
I think they forgot about the past.
But it is beautiful. It's the ultimate mirror, right?
It is. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful and so worth it a million times over. And the hardest thing. Hardest thing I'll ever do.
Yeah. And man, it's a commitment every day to keep going. Forgive. My favorite definition of forgiveness is to not cause additional harm.
Yeah.
And so when things happen, they happen. So to keep score on it, to keep holding on to it, to keep carrying it or re-injuring with it. It's like, you did this to me. That doesn't work. For us, Andy is deeply forgiving. I hold on to stuff. No, I'm just kidding. She keeps. I don't. Yeah.
Alzheimer's.
Yep. Guys, if you're going to marry.
Protective thing. I mean, he says, he's like, I'll pull up stuff and he's like, okay, you're an elephant, But at the same time.
With dates and times, but specifically.
I feel it's easier for me to forget things and just move on because I don't like holding on to that stuff. But I think where I'll retrieve things is if something similar comes up.
Yeah.
Then that index, index way back there goes, and hey, I remember this. But there's also things I find that personally, I think it's a blessing because of my history that I have forgotten a lot of things. You forget it and you move on because it's heavy baggage to carry for one. And, someone will remind me and I'll be like, oh yeah, that did happen or this or that. And I think it's a blessing just because my past encounter, my past relationship, it was just not pleasant at all. And, to get through it, I think the Lord just blessed me with amnesia.
That's the secret to a good relationship for anybody listening.
Yep. Amnesia.
Find a partner with amnesia. This has been amazing as a conversation. There is a ton of gold in here for those that'll hear it. And if you're just starting on this journey, it's so easy to get into those patterns where you think you're operating from your higher self, your wise self, and it's really your protectors or your adapters. And Candace Avery, who just popped in here, introduced me to adaptive protectors. And she so she introduced that concept, and I haven't left it alone since. And have had so many awakenings to where those are playing out in me. And so if you're on this journey and you're in relationship and you're noticing a lot of triggers coming up, recognize that they are all in you. That person is just your mirror. And that's all they are. I heard it said that relationships are mirrors, not medicine.
Yeah.
And so, but it is a space that allows you to see the things that do need medicine, and you can work on those. And so that's, the conversation today is the formula. What you just shared today is the formula to do that individually and in partnership. As how do I talk to my partner about the hard things? Well, you do it in the first person. I'm experiencing this, not you did this to me and you need to stop this. And that's what we tend to do in relationship. That's not relationship. That's control. And manipulation is anything you use to control the other person. So I'm deeply grateful that It's really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, just remember, if you're those that were listening, it's the distinction is fact and feeling. So
Mm,
it's what's the fact this thing happened? What am I feeling? I feel it has to be a real feeling. It can't be like I feel like you're an asshole. It's I feel sad. I
here's
feel
some
scared.
evidence.
I feel angry, right? It's like this happened and I feel sad. And this
Right.
is the story I'm telling myself. Right. So fact, feeling, and then the narration, where you're bidding for connection in that versus trying to push them away as being the source of your misery, right? That's not actually the truth. It's actually all happening inside of you. And yeah, it's a simple formula, but it's not easy to do in the moment. And so that's where
Yeah.
nervous system regulation is extremely important, and knowing what's coming up inside of your body and taking those pauses. And the deep breaths or the light activation if you're somebody who's more avoidant.
Yeah. I like that.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for the show today. Killer show. I'm going to go
Thank
back and
you
watch it
both.
too.
It was so
Yeah.
great to be with both of you, and Andy, it was so great to meet you.
And nice meeting you too.
Yeah.
So
Great.
I'm the beast in our relationship. She's the beauty.
I
Man,
see
what a
it.
great comments from those that are watching. Thank you for that. Just to be aware, Facebook has changed their algorithm, and so after 30 days, they're deleting all lives.
Oh,
And
man.
so if you want to watch these and consistently go back to them, you need to go subscribe on YouTube, where they'll be up there forever. We have over 330 episodes like this on there. So we've gone everything from the inner world to relationship to success. And so we're grateful for each of you for being a part of this creation. And we hope that you'll share this with somebody that you know that could use this. Thank you, Chris, for being on here today. And go make it a giant day. We love you, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.